So for the next hour, let's have a conversation about active citizenship, right? And our guest this morning is an active citizen. Wairimu Mwangi is one of those who was in the case, the impeachment, regarding Gachagua impeachment cases in court, public interest litigation. And she's done very many other things. Wanjiru, good morning.
Good morning.
How
My
are
name
you?
is actually Wanjiru Mwangi.
Oh, yes.
Sorry about that.
Yes.
I think there was a mistake.
Yes, I said Wairimu. I'm sorry.
It's all right.
It's Wanjiru Mwangi.
Yes.
I was reading Wairimu's comment.
Okay.
Yeah. You know, Wairimu, who's very active.
Oh, okay, yeah.
The limit of my knowledge of the language of Kikuyu, Nekewe.
Serious, that's it. Nekewe.
He has a lot more.
I think we're almost on the same page, so I think we're okay.
How are you?
Fine, thank you. How are you today?
Very good.
Yes.
Welcome to the hot seat of the situation room.
Thank you so much. It's
Karibu
an
sana.
absolute pleasure to be here.
Feel at home.
Thank you.
Feel at home.
Yes.
City.
Hey.
Time for the proverb.
Right. Our proverbs for today come from a country you may be familiar with.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. It borders the Indian Ocean.
That's a lot of countries.
I've just begun, actually.
Okay.
Okay. So now, it's a process of elimination.
Yes.
Okay, all right. Let's do this.
It has several neighbors. One is Tanzania.
Okay.
Another one is Uganda.
Oh.
Another one is Southern Sudan. Another one is Ethiopia. Another one is Somalia.
Oh, is that Kenya?
Are you sure?
I hope so. Indian Ocean? And all those are our neighbors? I am pretty sure. I hope so.
You hope so?
Are we in Kenya?
Right now?
No, not right now.
Well, I hope so. Otherwise, it'll be a bit of a problem. We've been talking things all morning, the assumption that we're in Kenya.
I'm going to have to ask this question. Are you Kenyan?
Yes, I try.
Okay. It is indeed Kenya. Our proverbs for the whole of this week will be from the Republic of Kenya. It'll be in Kiswahili, and I'll ask you to interpret it in English, and then perhaps tell us what you think the meaning is.
Okay. My Swahili is amazing, so...
No, don't worry, you're in good company.
Okay.
Wow.
Chui hakumbatiwi.
So a chewy is, I'm assuming, a leopard or a cheetah. I hope so.
So far, you're doing okay.
Yeah?
Let's keep up with the hope, eh?
Okay.
Hakumbatiwi.
Hakumbatiwi.
Yes.
Okay, that one.
It's a Swahili word.
Mbata umbatiwi.
I thought I was doing badly.
Oh, I'm terrible
Not
at
even
this.
Kenyan.
I was like, oh my gosh, what's happening?
Hey.
Hey.
These Kenyans are wonderful people.
Yeah,
Okay.
Yeah. Brilliant at Swahili. You can
All right,
tell.
all right. A leopard is not embraced.
All right. Interesting.
You all need to talk to those guys at KWS on Langata Road. Because at the cheetah den, it's chewy.
Cheetah.
At the cheetah den, it's written chewy. Yes.
See, it's not our fault.
It's not our fault.
Not our fault.
We saw it there. That's why we thought.
Okay.
What do you think that proverb is telling us?
The cheetah is, what? The leopard?
Is never embraced, never hugged. You don't hug a leopard.
Well, I think they're solitary creatures, so they're quite independent. So I don't think they would go looking for trouble and danger. They're quite isolated, keeping to themselves. So I think if you go looking for one, it will definitely not embrace you or you embrace it back.
Okay.
Yes.
So leave sleeping leopards sleep.
Yes, please.
Let sleeping leopards lie.
Let them hug it themselves.
We are kindred souls because that's exactly what I said in the morning.
Really?
Let them hug them. They hug
Let them hug each other.
Yeah, let them hug themselves.
You keep off.
Do they have leopards in Nigeria?
We have other things too. Would you like to know? See me behind the tent.
Wanjiru,
Yes.
we saw you on national TV speaking before the 3-judge bench.
Yes.
And this is in the consolidated cases around the impeachment.
Consolidated, yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
So why were you there?
So I am, I'm just a private citizen. I'm not a lawyer, and I'm obsessed with the Constitution. I think it is one of the most fantastic documents that we have in this day and age. And my co-petitioner is a guy called Dr. Ombaso. Unfortunately, he couldn't make it here today. He's also just a layman. He's a doctor. And he managed to get the documents for BBI, read them all the way and went to the Supreme Court and won on public participation. So he's also not a lawyer. So I remember he called me about this Rigathi Gachagua impeachment case, and he's just like, "Oh, I don't think how they're impeaching Rigathi Gachagua is correct." For me, I'm just like, I don't really particularly care because the shareholder comments is one of the reasons why I was on the protest. I was in the protest in the streets in June. Because I'm just like, you cannot call us a country of shareholders while we are the ones who have employed you. And it's true, they are our employees, and then they're telling us that they're the ones who own us. So it's very bizarre. So Dr. Ombaso and I had a massive argument, and I told him, there's no way I'm going to defend Rigathi. I think he should absolutely be impeached. And I thought it was actually quite laughable. If you asked me a year ago if I'd be trying to defend freedom of speech for Rigathi, I'd have told you there's absolutely no chance that would happen. So after I read the notice of motion that was passed in the National Assembly, I told him, okay, we have a very, very serious problem here. So the grounds they impeached Rigathi on were impacting freedom of conscience, Article 32.1, and freedom of expression, Article 33. And I thought that was a very slippery slope. It's about he said this, somebody felt like that, and there were no solid grounds of corruption. We agreed with the corruption charges, but when it came to speech, we're just like, if they can silence a deputy president that quickly and that easily, who are the rest of us? Next, they'll come for the judiciary, they'll come for the media, they'll come for the opposition. Anybody that speaks out, it's going to be a very slippery slope. So when I read that, I said, you know what, actually, let's file an application. So he drafted the application, we went through it, we talked about it, and we filed it on the 8th of October, before the impeachment at the National Assembly. And then we were given directions on the 9th of October, and by the time we were being heard, the impeachment process had already passed at the National Assembly. So it was now at the Senate. We got heard on the 16th of October, and on the 17th, our file got passed to the CJ on the 16th of October, and on the 17th, the Senate had now impeached Rigathi Gachagua. So we now found ourselves being in a situation where our application was overtaken by events. And it was really devastating because we're just like, we wanted them to stop at the National Assembly so they could correct the infringement on our rights. Because we remember not long ago, it was even dreaming about the president dying was treason. And we thought this was an extremely dangerous place to be as the nation of Kenya. It will start with the deputy president, and if they can do it so easily, it will just be an avalanche of our rights being taken away.
So you felt that the impeachment motion was an attempted, it was basically saying we should have gagged Rigathi.
Yes.
He shouldn't have said all the things that he said.
Correct.
But you now as Wanjiru,
yes,
were not happy with the things that Rigathi was saying.
No.
And you were hoping that he doesn't say them.
No, I want him to say them. Stories za jaba tunataka. The jaba is what made us so angry that
but you
we went
were out on the streets because he was saying the things that he was saying.
Yes. So we were out on the streets because he was actually illuminating a part of the political process that has been hidden. And I liked how he came to the media and he actually exposed and he said this, Wetangula has 30%, Suju, who else has 30%? And that's the reality of what's happening in our country. There are deals that are being made behind the scenes. So we're just like, we want that freedom of expression so we can be angry with what he says. And the reality is that there are remedies in court. He could have been sued for defamation. Yeah? But the way they were trying to gag him, we're just like, slippery slope. So that was our main concern. We're just like, can you take it back to the National Assembly? Can they impeach him on the actual offendable grounds like corruption? Because we agree on the grounds of corruption. But when it comes to he said, she said, there are legal remedies for that outside the impeachment process.
So what I'm hearing you say is that we seem to have gotten into kind of like the theatre of the absurd.
Yes.
That we are going... and stop me if I'm wrong, that we are going after folks who, and it could be anybody, it could be the former deputy president today, somebody else tomorrow.
Yes.
But that it doesn't matter what it is that they say, that the freedom of speech must be, or is actually guaranteed by the Constitution,
yes,
and that is what should be protected.
Yes, that's what we were saying. We're saying, however offensive it is, however obscene it is, however absurd it is, let him say it. Let us make a decision ourselves as a country how we feel about those remarks. Because for the reality is, this was not about tribe. We were all so angry at our political class because of comments like that. So they rallied us all behind one single enemy. No, sorry to say enemy, but we literally channeled ourselves and focused on the issue. And the issue was we have a political pandemic. It is not about tribe. It is not about age. It is not about hustler versus dynasty. We have a political pandemic. And it seems to us like they are trying to now silence everybody who's going to speak out against them. So what's going to happen then? We're going to be in a full-on dictatorship. So that was our main plight.
So you went to court.
Yes.
And then your case, your application plus the others by Rigathi himself and others were then consolidated.
Yes.
And you were heard at the same time.
Okay.
Were you?
No, not really. So what happened is our file was sent to the Chief Justice on the 16th of October. And then 17th of October, Rigathi was impeached by the Senate. I think he was a little bit heartbroken and he couldn't make it into the Senate to explain himself. So then our file was sent to the Chief Justice. Some application came in from the Attorney General on a Saturday, the 18th of October, which we found very bizarre. And then on Monday, when we go to court, it is Rigathi Gachagwa's lawyers fighting about an application because I think they managed to secure conservatory orders from Chacha Mwite and orders barring Kindiki from being sworn in. So that seemed to be the main focus. So our application, when we went to court on Monday, I think it was the 20th, was not even there. So we were asking the judges, we're just like, what is happening? Because as far as we're concerned, our file was sent to the Chief Justice on Thursday. The bench was created on the 14th, the Monday before, so that all the applications could be heard. Why is our application not in court today? So it was a very interesting process that was happening. So the other side wanted desperately the conservatory orders to be lifted and Kindiki to be sworn in. So the atmosphere in the court was so tense. You could feel it. Even the judges were just like, we have to move this, but they didn't know how to move it. And due process says that everybody should be heard. And we are the first applicants actually who filed, so we should have been heard together. So what ended up happening is the Judiciary then came and told us, hey, they told us, come back, let's check on your file. So on Monday evening, we wrote to the Chief Justice. We said, we are not understanding why our file is not in court. Could we please understand? Because the three-judge bench was commissioned to deal with, what's the word they call it? The three-judge bench was, is created for...
Empaneled.
Yes, that's the word I'm looking for. Yes, it was empaneled to hear all these matters. So then on Tuesday, we come to court and our files are there. And then there's still several other candidates whose files are not being placed in court. So we're trying to understand what's going on. So then there's an application for, I think it was recusal. No. Then the first issue they have to deal with is, how are you guys sitting on a Saturday, which is fair. So all our applications took a backseat so the Judiciary could actually explain that. And I told my co-petitioner, I said, the Judiciary is going to protect itself. That's what they always do. And that's what they did. Then after that, the process says that they have to now deal with recusal applications, which is what they did. Frankly speaking, I think it was very distasteful when they involved the wives, the spouses of the other people without enough evidence. I believe if you're going to take a shot at the Judiciary, don't miss, because they're actually very powerful people. And then after that, then the judges said they're going to give us a ruling, and they said, we're going to hear you guys on the 29th of October, and we protested. We said, why is everybody else being heard on a Thursday? I think Thursday was like the 26th, and we were being told to come the next week on the 29th.
And yet you're the first people
We are the first people, and we are laymen, so we are not lawyers. So technically speaking, we should have been given a little bit of allowance, which we weren't. So the 29th of October came, so then they gave the ruling for the recusal, and before the ruling they gave for the recusal, they said, one, we're going to deal with 2 petitions only on the following Monday. This is on the Tuesday 29th. So they said they're going to deal with the one that was from the Attorney General and the one that was from Rigathi's team, the one for the conservatory orders. Then they gave the ruling, said that they're going to recuse themselves, which they uploaded onto the CTS system 4 days later. So we couldn't really tell what the reasons were for them not recusing themselves. So we get a court on a Tuesday, and I remember discussing this with my co-petitioner over the weekend. I said, we are going to be bulldozed out of this courtroom. And I told him, and if we are not careful, we're not going to get heard. And if we don't get heard, there are a lot of people's lives who have been lost in this process. And our moment will just disappear and fade away into history. And that's what happened. So he says, no, let's apply to be interested parties, because in these applications, which is what we did, we applied to be interested parties, but as an interested party, you're not really the main party in the suit, so you don't get as much leeway. So we were only given about 5 minutes each to speak. And in those 5 minutes, I don't think we had ample time to actually deliver the message home. that we needed to, because I think Kenyans really needed that moment of pause from our judiciary. It was a beautiful moment that we lost. I think the accumulation of 2007, all the lives lost, to 2024, I think the judiciary owed us a pause as Kenyans, just to pause.
So
and
you
be
only
like,
got
okay.
5 minutes.
We only got,
After all this back and forth,
yes.
you only got 5 minutes in court.
Yes.
Did you exhaust your 5 minutes?
I'm not sure. So I also have a learning disability or ability, which I don't particularly like to use, because I think it's not. I feel like it's like a cheat card, but it's really not. I was diagnosed with dyslexia at 14 years old. So sometimes it takes me a longer time to get everything else I want in person. And in court, they have this thing where they knock.
Type.
Yes. So when I get rushed, sometimes I start rapping because I start speaking really fast. So we feel like we weren't afforded an opportunity. And I believe that Article 1, the reason why it said you can appear directly, was for moments like this. Because all the parties on both sides are being paid. We were the only Kenyans who are self-funded, who are just like, wait a minute.
This is not right.
Just stop. Wait a minute. People have died. Wait a minute. What was the point of 2007 if the 2010 Constitution cannot give us pause to think about those actions so we don't repeat them? So it was just truly unfortunate. And we spent the weekend mourning because we could not believe how quickly Kindiki was sworn in, and it's just unfortunate. And it was a beautiful time, and I wish the judiciary had just paused. But unfortunately, we have missed our moment.
Is there no way this thing can be reintroduced again?
For which process? Our application?
Your application.
You see, I think, yes, but the damage is already done. You see, we had an opportunity to stop the train in its tracks, right, before repeating the cycle, because I really believe Kenya is in a test, trial, and tribulation. I think that we keep making the same mistakes, and we keep being presented with the same problems. And I really believe, I think it's not really helpful to us when you tell us we'll give you a remedy after the fact, when our constitution actually provided remedies for us during that particular time. It already
Wanjiru,
planned for that.
Wanjiru,
Yes.
you said you were going to court.
Yes.
Not necessarily about Rigathi.
Yes.
It was about this and the precedent it's likely to set.
Correct.
So the precedent has been set.
Yes.
You can go and still apply and argue that this was wrong and this should not happen again.
Yes.
That, we should have constitutional safeguards so that if Wanjiru wants to say whatever she wants to say, she has the right to say it.
Yes.
As long as, of course, all the other safeguards are met. You're not offending somebody. Your right ends somewhere.
Yeah.
It's not just a blanket one. Our guest this morning is Wanjiru Mwangi. She's an active citizen. She was very much in the streets during the June protests and very much active elsewhere. And she's a rights defender. She got a call from a co-petitioner, Dr. Clarence Ombaso, who said, this petition, as the motion for impeachment as it's being presented against the deputy president, is infringing on his right to speak and the freedom of expression. And they agreed and they went to court. And this is what now we're hearing, the experience through this and what it means. What does it mean for jurisprudence? What does it mean for the Constitution? What does it mean for our judicial system? And what do you do when you're not in court or on the streets?
Unfortunately, I have been more and more in court, speaking about jurisprudence. My dad, I think a lot of people know there's all of these succession cases in court that tend to drag on and on and on. So unfortunately, I've been character developed by advocates over the last couple of years, seriously character developed. So luckily for me, he's let me represent him. He's given me his power of attorney, and the civil procedure rules allow you to act in person. That's why you can go represent yourself in person or act on somebody's behalf who is not able to. So yes, I think for me that's... So
you are an experienced litigant?
Trying.
Good.
Trying, yes.
Good.
So yeah, that's about it. And I'm an entrepreneur as well, and a tribal activist.
What
is a tribal activist?
I created this hashtag in 2017 called I Am Kenyan, and it has all the tribes of Kenya in it, and the hashtag Mimi Kenya. So I realized that because I grew up obviously not in Kenya, and I realized that a lot of divisive tactics we had to separate us was divide and conquer. And I'm obsessed with tribes. They're so beautiful. The culture, the heritage, the language, the customs. And when I realized that, because I actually remember trying to get endorsed by government agencies, even National Cohesion didn't even sponsor us in 2017. And we just realized that this conversation was not for them to change. It was for us to change, because they were profiting off tribalism the same way they were profiting off Hustler versus Dynasty. And it's just something that will never end unless we decide as citizens how we want to be led.
Petitioning at the court obviously is a right of every Kenyan citizen.
Yes.
To go to court to say, look, there's certain things that we see constitutionally that should be done that are not being done, and that's why you go to court to either overturn or shape, right?
Yeah.
Because then they tell us that their job is to interpret and say, okay, look, this is what the law says, this is what has been brought before us, let's see what we can do with it. The frustration that you feel after having gone through this October period, and from what you think that nothing was done, CT here would tell you no. That, by nature of the fact that you went and were heard,
yes,
and people saw and people understood that there has been a step that has been taken in a forward direction. And that what will cement that kind of action is continuous engagement at that kind of level. Because they say that you keep knocking at the door, either somebody's going to get so frustrated with the sound that they're going to open it, or they're actually going to want to see you. So one of those two things will result in the opening of the door.
Yes.
What are your thoughts in terms of, okay, well, you know what, we've been kicked in the teeth because, okay, we didn't get what we wanted. But does that mean that you stop?
No. First of all, thanks. And I do agree with CT over here. I think part of our constitution is working. And I think the reality is not all of it is working, because it's a document that has so many changes that effecting them all at once is virtually impossible. So I am grateful, and I know that there are people who suffered and lost their lives for us to be given this opportunity and the moment and time to speak, and that is why we went to courts. But at the same time, Article 27 guarantees equality. Right? So we're supposed to, when we're in courtrooms with lawyers, when we're in courtrooms with the Solicitor General, with the Attorney General, when the courtrooms with senators, it doesn't matter. We're supposed to be treated equally to them. And I think that's the next part of actualizing it. So yes, there is a lot of hope for Kenyans. And yes, it is a door for people to walk in and actually seek justice. I just do not think that the judiciary will be that positively responsive, because a lot of lawyers will also lose their jobs in the process.
Why? I need to stick on that point specifically, because you feel already that the judiciary will not do what it is constitutionally bound to do?
No, I feel like they interpret it, but how they interpret it sometimes is a little bit confusing, because like if you look at Article 163, it actually gave the grounds for when we can have a vacancy in the deputy's office. It's not imagined. It has been written there precisely. So him being impeached, by all means, he's not dead. And if he was dead, we would still get 60 days. So I feel like there are processes that have already been established. And for the judiciary to say, well, not yet, there's no precedent, the precedent is the Constitution. And if they read the letter to the T, I think the answers are already there. And I think that's where we find a place where, obviously, I don't blame the judiciary for what's going on, because if you look at what happened with Justice Mugabe, and when he summoned the Inspector General, his security was compromised. So I understand that the judiciary also have a lot to lose as individuals. They're humans also having a human experience. So I think we just have to be more gracious with each other. We have to review our Constitution and understand that there's a Hippocratic oath that they took. Without fear, favor, ill will, bias, it's impossible as a human being to do any of those things. AI can do it, but our reality is that we can't. And I think factoring in those things into accommodation, I think moving forward, we have to make significant changes in our country as a younger generation and as the older generation as well. I think we have to sit down and reanalyze our Constitution and be like, actually, this is what we got right. This is what we haven't managed to implement. Let's have a conversation around that. Because I do feel like our judiciary need other protection other than state protection if they're going to effectively deliver independent rulings. Until then, I think it's just we're just grasping at straws.
Do you think that if there was more in terms of independent private petitioners, citizen petitioners, if there was more engagement, do you think that it would move the needle that you see that is so stuck right now?
Move the needle
from the judiciary point of view, because you're saying it looks like. I mean, you mentioned state capture in a previous document.
I think.
Do you think that if there were more people coming out, if there were more people petitioning, if there were more people going to court and saying no, freedoms here guaranteed by the Constitution are not being met?
Yeah.
Because you it almost sounds as though you're saying that the judiciary is already stuck. Whether you talk until you're blue in the face, it's like it's a predetermined judgment. If more people came forward and kept anybody righteous,
do you think
it would make a difference?
I think it would, but I think we also have to look at the reality on the ground. There are 200 judges in Kenya, 20,000 lawyers, and I think we're about 58 million people, and everybody has to end up at the judiciary at some point in time. I think it is an impossible job for them to do. They are outmanned, they are under-resourced, and they're not in every single county. That's a reality. So I do think a lot of people going into the judiciary and actually seeking justice would make sense. But the institutions have not been stabilized yet intentionally. This is intentionally. Remember, Uhuru Muigai Kenyatta said we'll revisit the judiciary, and he did. And some of us have paid the price for the last couple of years by not having enough judges to hear our cases. So the reality is, it is as much political as it has always been. And until we get ourselves, my dad called it a colonial hangover. Yeah, we have a colonial whiplash hangover where we still believe certain things function in a certain way, but the reality is our constitution has overtaken such things. So we find ourselves in a precarious situation because as much as we'd want 1 million people to go to court, can the judiciary handle that capacity? I don't think they can right now.
You know, the law, by its very nature, exists because there's this understanding that human beings are more inclined to doing wrong than doing right.
Yeah.
If the fundamental understanding was that we are likely to do right, the judiciary would not be that important. Now, when you're dealing with a political situation, I think beyond the law, you have to understand with great clarity how the political system in this country works and how our politicians work within that system. Because in order for them to get what it is that they want, they will often skirt on the borders of either abrogating that law completely, bending it, twisting it, moving around it, or looking for someone who they think will be complicit with the plans they have. So you as a layperson, you start with the wrong end of the stick. That's your starting point. Now, the issue that we're discussing at the reference point of the impeachment of the deputy president, it's the situation, not the impeachment. It's like the thinking around it. A watershed moment, it reminds me of the repealing of Section 2A. In the absence of that, the repealing of Section 2A, Kenya would not be where it is today because multipartism wouldn't have been there. With multipartism came all these things that we've seen. We've had one referendum, wonderful thing. We didn't know what a referendum was like, but we saw it. We have seen a situation where a presidential election is told, not happening, have it again. Now we've seen an impeachment. Now, every time something this momentous happens, we set something in motion. And those who set it in motion, what I'm certain about is that they haven't completely understood that there'll be consequences, most of which will not be in their favor.
I agree. I think you make a very fair and valid point, and you are right. It was 19th June 1982 when we moved from multi-party democracy to a single-party dictatorship. And that was a young Mwai Kibaki and a Charles Jonjo. And that is what we saw. We saw our history repeating itself. Well, just like it's a very slippery slope because soon after that happened the August coup of 1982. People's now repression. And we have seen that again happening. People have actually fought. We are the only country that has fired our employees and they have refused to go home. And I find that absolutely bizarre. We went to Parliament. We told them, hey, you guys, go home. Where you have done a good job, but not good enough. And they said, no, we're going to stay. And then Ruto fires his cabinet. And then the fired employees who are MPs go back and hire the fired cabinet. And we're just like, okay, are we mad as a society?
Now that right there, you've actually encapsulated our political system in a way that is very difficult to do. I can't capture it in a better way.
Yeah.
Now, it tells you about the thinking, it tells you about the psychology, it tells you about the intentions, and it shows you a clear roadmap. This is what the political leadership is.
Yes.
And so if you're going to deal with the political leadership, remember, they more or less decide the directions we take, even with our law. Okay? Once you've understood them, then you, when seeking to have a contest with them, please don't start from the point of view that these people will be fair. They will not be fair.
Never.
Never, ever.
Never.
Okay?
Yeah.
Now, once you've understood that, and right now, and especially when their backs are against the wall, because their backs were against the wall, they have now been alerted as to the possibilities. And then they proceed to impeach a deputy president. My goodness. In my mind, these people have cut off their own legs without even realizing they've cut off their own legs.
Yeah.
Because if we can impeach a deputy president, what's an MP? We can recall you tomorrow.
What's the president? When Parliament has found out their job is to actually oversight the executive, then it's a beautiful day to be alive.
Precisely.
Yes.
You see, now, I look at the situations that we have, even the ones we consider to be bad, apart from the fact that it just affords us a little learning, but it also tells you how blind those who are in political power are, because they don't seem to fully understand or comprehend what they've set in motion.
Yeah.
And how detrimental it will be to them.
I agree. I sincerely hope for the spirit of Kenya that that's what happens, because I really feel like we're in a spiritual battle here.
When did we have ordinary citizens going to court? It started off with people like Omtata.
Yeah.
It's caught on. People go to court now.
Yes, they do.
People take their leaders on.
Yes.
People take their governors on.
Yes.
Now, these are not small things. Then you have an entire generation telling the political class, we are fed up.
Go home.
We are actually completely fed up. Forget our parents. They seem to tolerate you. You need to leave. Now, that generation are literally the future.
Yeah.
People who are my generation, there's one foot in the grave, there's one here. You can actually go at any time. So when you're alive, you need to be very grateful.
Yeah.
And yes, my generation are the ones who sleep and never wake up. Okay.
Okay.
Now, this other group of people are many. They are really very many.
Yeah.
They're not going away soon.
No.
So, don't you think somebody who is prudent or smart or wise would understand this and do something about what they're telling them? Because they are Kenyans like you, they're your employer also.
Yeah.
And they're telling you something and you're ignoring them. What do you think they're going to do to you?
I think this spirit of revolution is just beginning. And I really feel like the political class are completely unaware of what is happening, because I have a lot of friends who have studied abroad, gone to very expensive schools, have good jobs, run their parents' companies, and they were on the streets. We even wrote our phone numbers down on our bodies in case we got shot or injured, because we are just tired. We have lived in these countries where their systems work. We're going to spend a lot of money being educated there while Africa is being robbed by Africans for white people, which doesn't make sense to us. So the reality is we're 80%, as much as Ruto refers to us as human capital, which is basically slaves, that human capital is going to come back for him. And we are coming, because we are not stopping. We want our country back, and there's nothing going to stop us from getting it back. And my dad always told me, he tells me this thing. He said, why do you complain about other countries if you're not going to fight for your home? He says, all those other countries, their citizens fought for them to be like that.
And continue to.
Yes. So you either fight or you keep quiet and you leave. But he told me, when you leave, you have to remember you will not have another home. Kenya is actually your only home. And so on that basis, I said, you know what? Come and buy Mbaya. And as much as you're feeling death, for you, death is 1 foot away. For our generation, it is more so right now. Speaking out gets you disappeared, you in a gunia, you're missing, you're abducted. It doesn't make sense to us. And at the end of the day, we look at Ruto, we're just like, we're 80% of the population. We're more or less 40-something million. Are you planning on killing 40 million people so you can be by yourself in Kenya? Because it definitely won't work. Because as far as we understand the mathematics, we are the statistics that they need to borrow loans off. So it's imperative to keep the population alive and healthy. But in him, he's taking a completely different approach. And I think it's, again, that colonial whiplash, the hangover of let's do things like Moi did. And we're just like, you're not Moi. And we are also not Moi citizens.
Indeed.
Yeah.
There's also, and which has been called for a lot, that, the revolution in the mind, obviously, when you say, no, this is not on, this cannot be anymore. But then there's also the call for what ought to be.
Yeah.
And it's very necessary that in as much as the angst, in as much as the, just really the fed upness, if we can use that, let that be a word from today, all right? If that also is out in the open, then there must also be solution-oriented emotion that must be out there as well. Yeah. So what are we saying? Go get a voter's card? What are we saying? Make sure that you vote in 2027. Make sure that you are aware of what your constitution says. What are we saying needs to be done? Because all this emotion, pent up or otherwise, has to produce offspring, right? That is going to lead people forward.
Yeah.
What are we going to do with that emotion, which is well, it's well nurtured, and it is very well within, anybody's right.
Yes.
What do we do with it?
First of
so
all,
that we don't waste it.
First of all, there's nothing in our constitution that says we have to wait until 2027. As far as I understand it, a vote is a 5-year employment contract. Kura ni kibarua ya miaka 5 kufanya kazi. And there's nothing that says that if our help are not working, we have to just endure and suffer. Because right now we are actually all paying for our suffering. And I think that is ridiculous. Like you wake up in the morning just like, who's going to torture me today? Here's my money. So I think we have to change our mindset as to what is going on in our constitution and what we're entitled to. And that's why you see Ruto is very fearful of reconstituting IBC. Because he's afraid of a referendum. But in court right now, what has happened is that they have said that IBC did not need to be part of Kindiki's approvals. We're just like, great. So when we have our referendum, please, IBC, stay out of this one as well. Because the referendum is going to happen. And I think that was another safety mechanism in our constitution in case this same scenario happened again. I think Kibaki and the drafters of our constitution had the foresight of foreseeing the same thing happen again. And because they were part of the system and part of the game, they didn't want to tell us how it's played. But now I think we can all see what is happening.
Do you have friends who are constitutional lawyers? No, not who say they are, but who actually are.
Well, I had a lawyer who said he was a constitutional lawyer, and he did some things that were
unconstitutional.
I think blatant fraud. So,
why I asked the question is because the moment we get into the arena where we're now talking about what is constitutional and what isn't, that's where those who've taken the time and bother to study these things come in handy. Because we've had that discussion here. Do you need the commissioners for certain activities to take place, or is the executive just good enough? Once you have the CEO and the people who work within the secretariat, are they adequate? Okay. Or what is it that they can do without the commissioners, and what can they not do without the commissioners and so forth? It's an interesting discussion.
It is. And I think as long as I think the Constitution is so fairly simply written for anybody to understand it. And if you just look at Article 1.1 that says all sovereign power belongs to the people and it can be exercised directly, I think we're the ones who have to decide what that means. So if Ruto doesn't want to hire commissioners, I think we're learned and educated enough to be like, you know what, fine, the CEO can do it. And the chief of staff or whoever it is there. And I think that's where we are in our country. We're just like, we're outwitting each other. And I really wish we'd be planning on colonizing our colonizers instead of fighting each other. But the reality is that we're just in this situation. And to also answer your second part of the question, I think it's time for Kenyans to actually get actively in politics. And I think what we're hoping to see in the next election is independent candidates who are running for MPs, who are running for MCAs, who are running for senator, or running for governor. We don't want this thing to be whipped into a political party. We want people who are educated enough, who understand what they're doing in parliament, who are going there to make decisions on people and for their families, and understand that these are long-lasting choices that we're making, not simpletons. So we want to change the whole tone of how our politics is done, and I think that's what the new generation has shown us. And it was a beautiful time. I don't know if you guys have been to any protests, but there was such a magnetic electricity. It's like I was just born to be there. I don't know if that makes sense. It was.
Did you go to university in Kenya?
Partially.
Okay.
Yes.
Even if you had, some of the things that used to be the highlight of our times had long vanished. We had the JM Day, where we chose the times when we used to protest around the time when exams were around the corner.
Okay.
Yes. And don't ever underestimate the government. Don't ever. All they did was simply change the university timetable. So, yes, so when JM Day came to be, we were all at home. So Don't underestimate. The government has some of the sharpest people you can ever think of.
It really does.
Yes.
It really does.
Very well educated.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. It's just sad that they're not applying themselves for the betterment of our country. It's like for short-term political gain. And at the end of the day, it doesn't matter if you have 100 acres, 200 acres, 1 acre, 5 acres. You're going to be buried in 6x6, you know?
But
that's a reality.
To be fair to the government.
Yeah.
To be fair. Especially this particular government. You see, we discuss the Ruto presidency as though it's the only presidency we've had since independence. And yet, governments are a continuum. Moi inherited what Kenyatta had done. That's how I'm putting it simply. Kibaki inherited what Nania had done. What's his name again? Moi had done. Uhuru inherited what Kibaki had done. Ruto was in the government, yes, but he wasn't president. He also inherited what Uhuru had done. So some of the things that we see, why I use the word continuum, cannot be blamed on just one government.
I agree. I totally
agree.
However, yes.
That having been said,
yes,
the blame is interesting, but the solutions are that which are a little more difficult, and perhaps that ought to be our focus. Because we have a love for complaining.
Yeah.
And it feels nice to complain and to moan. It's really good. But it's a lot of energy. Perhaps if that energy was spent...
People propose solutions all the time.
Yeah.
Propose and act.
Yeah. You know, you propose solutions to those that have the mandate to act. Now, it's those that have the mandate to act will actually take it up and act. But if they don't, then you come back and you complain that I told you, let's do this, and you didn't do it. You want me to come and do it? Then get out of office, which is what they did on the 25th of June, isn't it?
Oh, yeah. We fired them and they refused to go.
Okay. Hi, Wanjiru. It's been an interesting conversation, and thank you very much for joining us today. So what next?
For us?
Yeah.
A referendum.
I
think that's we're trying to experience to check off all the articles in our constitution and just
a referendum on what?
On, I think we need to look at our judiciary, our political system, and I think for one of the solutions you're talking about, I think it's very important to focus on education. They say the African saying is it takes a village to raise a child, and when you see like King Charles of England's first visit to Kenya is to talk about our education, I think there's a huge problem with that. And I think if we're teaching people our constitution, if we're teaching them about taxation, if we're teaching them about our political system, then you have a whole entire generation that is actually prepared to deal with what's happening.
Wanjiru Mwangi, active citizen, rights defender, has been our guest this morning.
This is the Situation Room, the only way to start your day.